Our next speaker is Dr. Joo Sup Kim. Dr. Kim is the former Chief Presiding Administrative Judge, IPTAP, Korean Intellectual Property Office. To your honor, before joining Korean IP Office, you were the VP and LG IP Center for a long period of time. Nevertheless, you have contributed to LG for decades on IP-related matters, supporting LG to succeed in global market through sophisticated IP management. May you kindly share the philosophy of IP management in LG?
Sure, I'll do. I believe your question is very thoughtful. And just briefly, I want to explain about my, philosophy or my policies while I was working at LG in the past. So I may choose, big 3 points to explain about how to manage IP professionally. Number one is, it's very important to put IP center as a business department, which means that normally, as a starting point, IP center will be treated as cost center rather than other kind of concept. But I really urge that you have to, or company must, place IP center as a profit center by, giving a certain value, such as business, one of business, kind of business department. By doing that, whenever any results coming out from IP center, people can give more credit on that. And also, people can, cheers about the results from IP center. And also, there will be a certain kind of business mindset is required to those members who are working at IP center. If not, they want to, stay behind of other business departments, never being, paid any attention from other departments at all. So even if it will take some risks, I do recommend. And I do personally does have a concept that, IP center must be defined as a profit center. That's number one. Number two, well, number two wise, it's simple. Who will become the head of IP center? So number one is, IP center is profit center. To become a profit center, number two is very important. The head of IP center will be CEOs of company. CEO is the company, or the authority. So he must be the person who will be in charge of IP center. That is most important part. If you don't have CEO support for the IP center, there's no way that you can have any success in generating or creating a certain profit from IP in a company. Just for example, one example is that U.S. Hewlett-Packard Company. One time, Hewlett-Packard Company's logo was invent under the Hewlett-Packard signage. That was, lasted during the CEO of Carl Fiorina. Carl Fiorina was one of first lady CEOs in U.S. companies. and she was one of very famous CEO. And she picked that logo for the company. That means that IP is the most important, one of important part as our company assets. And the second one is that I do want to emphasize, IBM. One time, well, Tom Watson, I believe that's his correct name. One time he was head of IBM's R&D center. And while he was as a head of IBM R&D center, he picked the word saying that think. That was the logo of IBM's R&D center. Since he picked up that logo, it's been lasted almost decades. Still, they keep using think as the logo for the creation and generation of IP. Since then, what happened in IBM? Almost decade, IBM has been leading IP society as the most thickest, most valuable IP portfolio in the United States. That's what happened. So we need such kind of role must be, given to the CEOs as the head of IP center. That's number two. That's why you have to educate your CEOs, let them understand what's the importance of IP. That's the second one. Third one is, third one is it will go to the IP members. If you want to, really encourage your members, IP members, work hard, enthusiastically to, make their own dream come true. You have to teach them, which means that you have to educate them and grow them much higher levels in IP area. Unless you will have your members become a internationally well-educated IP expert. You cannot expect that your company will become the leader in the world. So it's not because you are become number one in the world, it's because your members will come number one, then automatically your department and your company will become number one in IP area. That's, shortly, big 3 point regarding my IP policy and IP strategy.
Yeah, thank you very much. So turning the IP center as a profit center and getting a high-ranking support, career-wise, develop your colleagues, your staff with the vision, saying they will help to further make the IP management more important and make influential for LG. The very important example is you have been mentioned to us. It's a very remarkable milestone for LG is that you successfully support LG acquire a CODA patent. By applying this patent technology, it enabled LG become the world #1 company who is able to manufacture the largest LCD screen in the world. It's a true milestone for LG. So would you mind sharing the process and your legendary history, those principal strategies in LG, how you try to allocate the usage resources based on those self-developed technology, acquire licensing in or licensing out technology. When you mention about you make your IP center profitable and make the company more important.
Yes, as you mentioned, how we can really support and help the business department will become very profitable for the company. That's very important thing. but to really help the business department or manufacturing sections, you have to set up a certain, IP strategy in line with R&D strategy and company business strategy. That is very important. Unless you can get some cooperation with business department and R&D department, you will not have any valuable IP at all. So in that sense, first of all, you have to arrange those three different strategies together, which means that you have to, find out what is company's business strategy, and then move on to R&D strategy. And then you will focus on your job, saying that if they want to, R&D in this area, then how we can extract or capture a new inventions from the R&D department. That is the most important part. So if I move to one example, in the case of LCD area, once, we try to develop large size LCD screen to compete with PDP manufacturers. At that time, PDP manufacturers dominant large size TVs and beyond. And on the other hand, LCD manufacturers are just stay in medium and small size of LCD only. There's a lot of issues about how we can make a large size LCD panel, such as if you want to make large size panel, the most important part is when you inject liquid crystal between two glasses. The bigger size panel, and it will take much more time to inject the liquid crystal just between two large glasses, which means it's not easy to uniformly inject liquid crystal inside of two large size glasses. It's pretty hard, and yield-wise, that's very, unsuccessful. So in that sense, we need to develop a different approach. So when we were, search and study how to make large size panel in a short time and uniformly well arranged. That time, we decided to develop large size injection equipment in cooperation with equipment manufacturers outside. At that time, most of the engineers are obsessed by such kind of R&Ds and development project. Nobody can move. They cannot waste their time at all. So I launched a special task teams to help those engineers in a way like this. I sent all of my members to the factory side and do not bother any of the engineers at all. But whenever the engineers comes out from R&D site or factory site for their breaking time, you approach them and find out new ideas, new approaches, and just write down all those new ideas, new process into our patent applications. So when we finished that task, we almost generated 100 to 200 new inventions covering new process technology, what's been called as one-drop pilling process, which make large size panel all of a sudden, so that it will become industry de facto standard for making large size panel. So it was very successful. And also when it comes to Kodak OLED screen wise, there was another story. Kodak was a real innovators in the field of OLED, but the problem was that they failed OLED technology into real product, even if they spend huge monies and they really, spend a lot of, engineers try to make a real product, but finally they failed it, and they put all of their patent portfolio on sale, for sale, at the same time their business as well. So at that time, there was only one OLED manufacturers, only in the field of small size. That was our competitors, rivals, Samsung. But we want to try to extend and expand our business into OLED business, but we didn't have a right technology for that. So in that sense, we thought that we gotta purchase Kodak's business. But later on, when I was involved in such kind of project, I suggested we just purchase Kodak OLED patent only, not business as a whole, because we have our own OLED engineers. So there was as a starting point to launch our purchasing OLED patent. It was a consortium type, but in the beginning we failed, and later on we finally purchased by finalized the negotiation with Kodak. It took long, but there was very strong support from CEOs. If CEO didn't, give any empowerment to the leading negotiator, to me, I could have finished that successfully. So number one, CEO's decision. Number second, the empowerment to the leading negotiator. That's the most important part when I was involved in, OLED screen as well as LCD screen. In view of panel makers among, the world manufacturers. That's my experience.
Thank you very much for sharing this very intriguing story. First, you teach us you have the integration of IP strategy among business and R&D, and you initiate the special task team to develop internal patent profile. And you very smartly suggest the company buying the patent only instead of the whole business, sub-company business, the cost, and also endorse and also enforce the patent to make manufacture in your own company be very successful business. So it's a wonderful story, and it's very kind for sharing this insight. So apart from the IP philosophy and your management of your IP strategy in licensing out or acquisition of IP, we are also aware you are the leading litigator in the world, because you have been supported LG fighting in over 50 countries with several hundred patent litigations. We wonder, would you mind share your accents, how you decided to fight in the court, and when you decide to settle cross-licensing or initiating merger acquisition or other alternative small measure based on IP. Perhaps you would like to share more insights and true cases as well?
Oh, sure. Well, when it comes to IP litigations. Mostly I was involved in patent litigations, both in the part of plaintiff and also defendant. But there were more cases in the as a defendant side. But when it goes to the litigation, the most important part to organize a litigation team in a company. To do that, you have to consider one important thing. You cannot win the case just hiring lawyers and investment money for the teams. There's no way. But one important thing is that how you can find competitive lawyers in the world. That's the most important part. If the litigation occurred in the United States, absolutely you must find U.S. lawyers for that. The litigation in the U.S. Who is the best lawyers in the world? That's the most important part. How are you going to find it? Well, there's many ways. I absolutely understand that everybody does have its own know-hows, how to locate and find the right lawyers. But in my view-wise, I did this. Well, first of all, I get several candidate lawyers who will really represent us in a certain case, and that's fine. I check all those candidate lawyers, and then perhaps I pick 2 or 3 lawyers, and then either I directly meet with them and have a small interview in person and find out whether he's right person and right personality and right capability for our case. Those things are very important. If not, well, if you may choose to have a direct communication over the phone. That's possible too. I will just choose either one of the 2. So I picked, the very competitive lawyers by using such kind of tactics. And it was successful in my view. And the second one is, let's say that your lawyers are handling your cases in US, in New Zealand, UK, everywhere in the world. Okay, so you will have common communications in email, perhaps using phones, such kind of tools. But the most important part is that you got to go to the workplace, the place where the case is moving around, the case is moving ahead. If you have a case in UK, you got to go to UK court and UK law firm and just discuss that issue with your lawyers, and must attend UK court and find out what's been happening in the court. You know what? If you don't go and visit their places, you got to miss so many points. What kind of point you will miss? Number 1, you don't know what's the real issues in the court. Court-wise, one party is doing one argument, the other party is the rebuttal. That's always the case. But you don't know whether your lawyers are doing the best or your opponent lawyers are doing better. That's the important thing. The second thing is that you got to find out, the relationship between the lawyers and judge, your litigator and judge. If your litigators are doing very good, very excellent in view of your side, but the problem is that judge does have any bad feelings against your litigators. Whatever your litigators are doing the best in view of objective doesn't matter. Judge will not give any credit whatever your lawyers are doing in the court, that really, make your cases go in the long way. So once you find out, you got to correct such kind of issues. How to correct that issues? Well, there are many other, tactics too. I may mention about the, recovery of such kind of issues later, but from, today's viewpoint, I think you got to go to the workplace and find the problem and solve the problem on the spot. That is the most important part. And how to manage that? Unless you will have the problem, you cannot have real efficient communication with your litigators at all. You got to pinpoint the problem and resolve, and also support for them. For example, sometimes there will be a strong proposal from the judges saying that, A, plaintiff and defendant, it looks like your gap for the settlements is very narrow. So in my view, I will give one more chances. In my court right now, let's say that I will give 30 minutes or 1 hour for the settlement. You both parties meet together in person and find out the solution. If not, whatever it is, bring it to the court. That means, judges like the settlement. If you don't settle, who is stronger resistance to such kind of settlement, then that party will have very unfavorable instructions at the minimum from the judges, and you will have bad result even if you will finish your trials before the court. So that is most important part. So what I emphasize the importance of visiting the workplace. That is the most important part. Having that concept, you can find the problem and really find the solutions while you visit the workplaces, while communicating with the lawyers, while communicating your members in a team.
Thank you very much for your very valuable two case sharing. That does give us a lot of insight how to deal with litigation globally. Nevertheless, we are aware Korean IP office is among the top 5 in the world together with USPTO, EPO, China, and Japan. And how would you describe the significant feature for Korean IP managed style if we compare with the other big corporate located in other regions?
Well, when it comes to IP authorization, offices such as KIPO, I can explain briefly about KIPO's activities in cooperation with other IP5 members to the best of my memory. Right now I just left KIPO, so I rely on my memory briefly. So what I do is that, as everybody knows that right now the world is facing a COVID-19 pandemic all over the world.
Yes.
At the same time, we are also coping with the forthcoming fourth industrial revolution. So it comes together right now. So how we overcome the current difficulties and challenging issues under such, embarrassing situations, this is very important things. So I remember about KIPO's activities like this. Number one, what was number one? We believe that we gotta, cope with COVID-19 pandemic that is very serious. all of a sudden, just within almost 2 years. So KIPO decided to help the industry that we can overcome the pandemic. So in that sense, what they did was that, they got to establish and just organize a big data team, which means that how we can find some ideas that we can help the medical companies so that they can develop and find the vaccines and medicines to cure the COVID-19. I think that was a real good decision and smart movement very quickly. And later on, and KIPO, just offered to share the knowledge and information, we found from the big data at KIPO, so that maybe IP5 members, they agreed to share some, information together. I think that's good movement too. The second one is that, well, to boost the IP market in Korea, because we need to, establish IP favorable environment for the industry. To do that, what happened is KIPO is really making, a certain tools to give a certain benefit to those companies who might have a damage from potential infringers. In that sense, they changed the IP law to protect the IP business strongly. IP business means that, IP business for the manufacturing companies. So how, we try to help them? We changed the IP law to increase the, IP damages almost 3 times, which is really huge. I think that's one, fashion going around in the world, including China and Japan and other countries too. So that's one good movement. And second one is trade secret. Trade secret is one of the important issues to the small and medium companies. Whenever small and medium companies, they make a deal with the large companies, they feel like they are victims always. Why? Because small and medium companies, they are providing, just component to the, big manufacturing companies. Then whenever they got a burden that, one is the timing that, big company will cut the supply of their, their component. That's big headache. So that to eliminate such kind of happenings, which means that small and medium company will not become a real victims in a sense of trade secret violation. Why? Actually, the violator will become, big companies. Once that happens, the violation of trade secret is very, very huge and critical. So to boost small and medium companies, trade secret violation does have a lot of heavy penalties based on the, changing the trade secret law. That's important thing. And number 4 is that how we prepare for the 4th industrial revolution. Internally at KIPO, what's been organized in KIPO is that KIPO has introduced Convergence Technology Examination Bureau newly to cover AI, VR, AR, IoT, drone, maybe autonomous driving technology, and so on. So that is one of the important things that we have to prepare for the future IP asset. That will help, the new business section that's related to high-tech, technologies. That's been happening in KIPO when I remember until I left KIPO.
Thank you very much for sharing this abundance project initiative from KIPO. And thank you again for sharing your valuable wisdom and comprehensive explanation with true cases. We hope soon again we can invite you for sharing more essence on how to match IP and monetization in corporate. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before we close the section, Dr. Kim would like to share some tips for the audience. It's very kind of you. Would you mind elaborate the tips for the audience?
Well, on the top of my tongue, well, I don't have a big point, but like I mentioned before, how you can handle your litigations in a workplaces, that's important thing. Like I said, how to pick the best lawyers, and how to manage, the relationship between judge and lawyers in the court. Well, I had one cases. In my cases at the U.S. court, once I was attending trial cases in the court, I found that the relationship between judge and my lawyers was really bad.
How could you find out that? How could you find out?
Well, no. Well, it's easy. I was in the court and looking the whole process behind them. So whenever our litigators is, arguing and stating something before judge, it looks like judge is not listening at all. Or sometimes judge is not listening, seriously. But whenever the opponent representative is, arguing and suggesting something, the judge is nodding his head and really, reacts very, very favorably. If you were in the court, then you will realize, you will sense it anyway. But I was there. I thought that this is very serious point. How I can cure this problem? Supposing that if you're going to let your lawyers finish the whole trials, but how, what can you expect? You can expect the worst result.
Yes.
If you will just proceed having your litigators as it is. So I decided in this way. Well, let's say that if I will maintain our litigation lawyers until the end of this trial, the expectation is very crystal clear. So in that sense, I want to change my litigation lawyer in the court. And then I may have much higher percentage of success. At the minimum, 1 or 2% higher than the current litigation lawyers. I will take that higher percentage, even if that's 1 or more 2% higher than. That's why I decided. And I had an interview very quickly inside of the same law firms. And I picked one, candidate, which I believed the best. So I had let he replace the former litigators. And you know what happened? At the end, we won the case. And then, although my members were surprised. Why? Because the time when I replaced our previous litigators, our members, they all registered and they want to maintain the same litigators. I said no, because I was head of litigation. So I decided, and what was the result? And the result was successful, and it really changed judges' mindset as well. Remember that our opponent litigators has been doing much better than us, but all of a sudden it's been changed, almost balanced, right? So we had our case won at that case-wise. So it's good tips if it helped you, but it's my experience. I don't want you change, so often, but if you will, enrich and cope with such kind of worst scenario expected, then you gotta decide.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, for your very comprehensive, valuable sharing.